Hello. Okay, Ahsoka Episode 7, Dreams and Monsters, my very late review of this episode. And the episode starts off at Coruscant, and I really liked this scene. I enjoyed this moment during the disciplinary hearing with Hera. But there are a couple of other things that bugged me, not just with this moment, but that seem to be running through this series so far. And that's just a lot of these certain characters' motivations. For example, the senator that keeps going up against Hera and sort of denying her fears of Thrawn returning. That logic, I struggled to believe in the logic behind that, and as a result, that particular character, this particular senator that I'm referring to, just ends up feeling like a mechanism to just sort of be there to create drama for these moments, and sort of, yeah, it never quite feels natural enough for me. But one of the many minor gripes that I have with this show is just that logic and with certain characters and their motivations. But yes, I like this moment because we also get a hint of Andor, I felt, with the politics side of the story, and I just absolutely adore the actress playing Mon Mothma. I think she is absolutely superb, and there's this moment where she asks Hera, how real is this threat? And it just gave you chills, and it's all because of her performance and how she sort of brings this character to life. I also really liked C-3PO's cameo within this moment as well, and how they worked it into the story briefly. For me, it was perfect. It didn't need to be Princess Leia. It really didn't. C-3PO was the right choice, the right character here to use for this very brief moment, and I just thought it was perfection. There is also a beautiful moment with Ahsoka training on her ship while they're in hyperspace with the Purrgil, and you've got Anakin as a hologram with one of his training messages, and I just think this is a beautiful moment, and it really sort of highlights sort of like these deeper themes that's running through this series. I felt there's a lot of sadness and just themes of grief running throughout this show. I think personally it's quite a dark, it's one of the darker Star Wars shows or materials that we've had, and there is this kind of very kind of sad, grief-ridden kind of depth to the story. And yeah, this one particular moment for me highlights that, but it's also a very beautiful scene, and it's just great again to see Hayden Christensen in this role. He's absolutely fantastic. And I also love the banter between Huyang and Ahsoka during these moments, and with the moments with the action while they're trying to escape the Imperial mines. And just that entire sequence, it's a lot of fun, it's exciting, I felt like it's very well shot. It also has that classic Star Wars vibe about it, but yeah, I'm really liking that dynamic and that relationship between Huyang and Ahsoka. I just think it just feels natural, and it just really works. It's great. Thrawn. I loved Thrawn in this episode. In the previous one, don't get me wrong, I loved that entire introduction to the character in the last episode, where you see the stormtroopers with him just sort of walking down with them chanting Thrawn, and it was absolute perfection. But I was a little bit unsure with the actor playing Thrawn, if he was the right, Lars Mikkelsen, if he was the right actor to be playing this character, even though I liked what he was doing with the character. With this episode, I just really, really dug what he was doing, and I'm really coming around to Lars Mikkelsen playing this character that, I've read from the old trilogy books from the early 90s, the Thrawn trilogy. And so, like a lot of other Star Wars fans, I've got this kind of image or perception of what I think Thrawn should look like, and sometimes it can be really hard to detach from that. I am relieved that actually by watching this latest episode that I am starting to really come around to what Lars Mikkelsen is doing with the character. He has this almost kind of Hammer horror vibe about him, like with Christopher Lee when he was portraying Dracula. There's something very kind of Hammer Dracula about the way Lars Mikkelsen is playing this character, and I absolutely love it. There are some certain moments that he does with his expressions, and they're very nuanced, they're very slight, but it's beautiful. I love it. And with this episode, you really get to see how brilliant he is when it comes to planning and plotting. You know, his tactical brilliance that this character has really comes to show, or comes to surface within this episode. There are some really nice shots throughout this episode. There's this beautiful shot of Baylan riding this creature. And it has this kind of very Game of Thrones feel to it with the world, which also just reminds me, this planet that they're on reminds me of the planet from Prometheus and Alien Covenant. It has that kind of really dark, gritty, earthy feeling to it that just really makes this world, helps make the world feel very much lived in and real, and so you can almost touch it. Like, I feel like this is the best episode really when it comes to not really being able to sense the volume stages, and it feels vast. You could feel that kind of epic, kind of large scale and scope to this world and to the galaxy, and I think they really achieve it in this particular episode. There's a lot of really nice shots, and I really like the look of the Night Sisters. I failed to mention this in my previous review, but I'm really liking the design and how they've adapted the Night Sisters into live action. There is an element of Dune to them, but they also feel very much Star Wars. They don't come across as too silly or over the top or too cartoony. They actually fit really well into this very much, a very real world, and they feel real as a result. They work, the Night Sisters, and what they are able to do really works well into this world that they've created, and it just doesn't stick out, or it just doesn't feel, like I said, too cartoony or too silly. I really dig the design and look of them. There is a moment that kind of took me back to The Empire Strikes Back, where you've got Ahsoka trying to connect with Sabine so she can try and locate her, and it's very much like the scene at the end of Empire Strikes Back when Luke is trying to reach out to Leia, and at that point we don't know that Leia is Luke's sister, and so it's force sensitive, and so I really like how this moment within this episode mirrors that other moment, because it also kind of points us in sort of maybe, or hints at, that Sabine could very well be force sensitive maybe. I don't know. I'm hoping she isn't, and her character is never actually able to use the force. That's where I'm hoping they go with the character, but you never know. And while we're on the character of Sabine, it's taking me up into this episode to really just accept and realise that this character, the actress playing Sabine, is just not working for me. I feel like her performance lacks energy. I'm unable to get emotionally attached to the character, and I'll be honest, I'm not really sure if it's the writing or the performance that's doing this for me. I think the writing's been pretty strong throughout this series, but there's just something about her performance that's just really lacking this energy that I feel like she needs. And so yeah, I've come to the conclusion up until this episode that the actress playing Sabine is just not working. For me, it isn't anyway, personally. We get a really fun moment with Ezra, Sabine, and the Noti. I believe that's what they are called. These cute little creatures that I just really adore. And they've got these big kind of shell-like tanks. I just love the design of them. Again, sort of the aesthetic and just the look of these vehicles have this kind of very lived-in, dirty, gritty vibe about it. But then you've got all these very cute fucking creatures sort of controlling them, and then you get this moment where they're attacked by Shin and the bandits, and it's a very fun moment, the way in which it plays out. I'll be honest, this particular episode, I thought the action was very well shot and very well planned out, and just from the camera positions, they had a lot of energy to them, and they all felt quite natural, and that's been very inconsistent throughout this series, I feel. Like the duel with, again, we get a very brief duel with Baylan and Ahsoka, and it's absolutely fantastic. You feel the force and the energy behind Baylan with his strikes, and just the way it plays out, and a lot of it is just down to the way it's shot. I felt like, yeah, everything just felt a little bit more natural in how these moments played out, and I thought the action was just very well directed within this episode. But I just like, with this scene, for example, with the Noti, and you got, these natives where all they've got to protect themselves is like a slingshot, and again, it just sort of takes you back to the original trilogy with the Ewoks in Return of the Jedi, or Jar Jar in The Phantom Menace. They retain in all those kind of classic elements of what makes Star Wars, and I just really appreciate that. And I really didn't have a problem with the character of Ezra not taking his lightsaber back, just like I didn't have a problem with Luke Skywalker doing the exact same thing in The Last Jedi. In fact, it's one of the reasons why I loved The Last Jedi. It's not really, they tease us with what you would sort of come to expect. Yeah, he's going to take his lightsaber back, be a Jedi, and be all heroic. But they do something completely different. They take a U-turn, and it's like, I much prefer that. Like, he doesn't need... Like, we know he's going to use the lightsaber again, but he doesn't need to do it straight away, does he? So, without me rambling on too much about that and sort of ended up, we're going into sort of Last Jedi territory, because I absolutely adore that film, just for the record. I'm just going to keep it very brief here. I really didn't mind that decision. So one thing I will agree to a lot of people when it comes to the criticisms of this episode is it doesn't really move the story along that much. Now, but that didn't bother me, because what I did like about this episode, what they did do, well, this episode really felt like a game of chess, and it really highlighted the character of Thrawn and how this character works, and just really highlighted his tactical brilliance and what he's capable of doing. And I adored that about this episode, because that really comes to show within this episode. This entire episode is like, we've got all our different characters, we've got some reunions, we've got some separations, but we've got them all in their different positions, ready for the final episode. And I felt like, even though, yes, I agree, it doesn't really move the story along, I thought it was quite a fun and entertaining episode, where we got a lot more insight into characters like Thrawn, and a little bit more hints when it comes to Baylan, and I just loved seeing more of the world. But we also got we get to see where these characters are ending up just before the final episode. To me, it was just like one big game of chess, and you've got Thrawn controlling everything, and that's how this episode feels. I think that's how they intended this episode to be, where you've got Thrawn doing his thing and manipulating and planning these situations. And he's now a few steps ahead of Ahsoka. And yeah, I felt like the episode really, really achieved that. So that lack of moving the story forward really didn't bother me. So yeah, a fun, entertaining episode. Got a few minor gripes like I've had throughout this series. It's not a perfect series, but I'm really enjoying it. I'm really enjoying the vibe and just the look and the feel. So yeah, they are my thoughts on Ahsoka episode 7. I can't wait for episode 8 on Wednesday. I will do my review of that episode, as well as just a kind of a summary of how I felt of the season as a whole, and then grade it. Did you agree or disagree with anything I've said? Then let me know in the comments below, and let's get a discussion going. And if you've made it this far into the video, thank you so much. I really do appreciate it. If you want to see future reviews from just some random Welsh geek rambling on, then please hit the subscribe button. It will mean an awful lot to me. So yeah, thank you for watching, and I'll be catching you guys soon, and may the Force be with you.